So this weekend, we actually had a chance to check out the new Polestar 2 electric vehicle, one that's actually able to be ordered today and delivered in like 2 to 3 weeks. Very quick turnaround. It's not like these cars that we've seen that may come to fruition, may not.
Yeah, they're always like 2 to 3 years out.
Exactly.
This is one that is here, it's available now.
I could buy it and take delivery in like 2 to 3 weeks, which I love to see because that means they're actually making them. And they actually came to us out at our house and we got to check it out. We both got to drive. Unfortunately, we couldn't do any video during everything, but we were able to take some photos. So we'll be kind of going through some of those, but we want to talk to you about the Polestar 2, our thoughts on it. This is not sponsored by Polestar in any way. We were actually just given the chance to test drive the vehicle.
And basically we're going to talk about it, what we liked about it, what we didn't like, and maybe how it compares to what we've driven in the past few years, which is Tesla Model S, 3, X, and Y.
Yep. So first off, we'll go ahead and start. The Polestar 2 is actually an all-wheel drive. It does have a 78 kilowatt hour battery pack that it uses. The only downside that I kind of found with that is rather than the battery pack being the length of the floor, it does take up part of the center, so you get that hump in the rear seat.
Yeah, so that really cuts down on the leg room for a middle passenger in the rear seat.
Overall, I thought it handled very well on our drive. The shocks were very nice. It was comfortable. It was relatively quiet. Again, with EVs, you don't have that motor noise, so you tend to hear a little bit more of like wind and such like that. But overall, the drive was very nice.
Yeah, it was a great looking car. A lot of cool neat features that we are missing from maybe the Tesla vehicles that we've been used to over the last few years.
Driving it felt very cockpit-like because this center console was raised a bit. You had the instrument cluster screen in front of you. So it felt very cockpit-like for me, as well as the passenger seat.
Also, the seats themselves were really like form-fitting. I mean,
super comfy.
Tesla seats are pretty comfortable, but these had like nice extendable room for your thigh, so you could pull it out.
Yeah.
And I could see those seats being very comfortable on a long road trip.
When sitting in the seat, I still have like 3-4 inches hanging off.
And we're not that tall, but our legs are just long enough that there's several inches overhanging, and you just feel that on long road trips. So as soon as I got into that Polestar, I pulled that out. I was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, the interior though, I like the lack of buttons. The screen was Android Auto, and I found it to be very snappy. Yeah. Which was great.
And since we're Android phone users, it was very comfortable, very familiar, and like I said, very snappy, very responsive compared to what we've seen in some other cars out there.
It does have a single Qi charger under that screen. Your phone kind of sits away from you, which I understand why they did that. You're not supposed to be looking at your phone while in the vehicle. As far as the center console, pretty basic stuff. Instrument cluster was actually pretty nice.
Pretty nice, and it was nice that you could customize it too.
Yep.
A couple different settings, so you could choose to see more like the charge and the speed, or if you wanted to see like the Google Maps navigation.
Yeah, it definitely had a lot of like customization. The steering wheels had a few extra buttons that could kind of maybe get lost in a little bit. I kind of gotten used to and appreciate the minimalistic look of the Model 3 and the Y steering wheel, but the steering wheel reminded me much more of like an S and X.
Yeah, and I didn't even fool around with all the buttons because they were labeled, but I didn't even take time to try to figure out. So we didn't try any of like the lane keeping assist and all that stuff.
But overall, I would say the interior felt very nice. We didn't drive the leather interior. It was the like fabric interior, which is their like vegan alternative. And I thought it was actually really comfortable, really nice.
It was really nice.
Felt good.
And the dash was very nice. Yep. And the sound system, I think it had like 13 speakers. Harman. It still sounded good, but it's like Harman Kardon.
Yeah.
And it looked nice. The dash, the doors, everything looked nice. It had a glass roof, somewhat similar to what we have in the Model Y or the Model 3. Not quite as wide, I guess. One thing it did have is there were a few buttons over on the driver's doors. So for the settings for the driver profiles, it was limited to like two. Whereas in a Tesla, you can have multiple ones and switch them via the screen. So not a huge difference, and we don't really change those profiles. Most people probably don't need more than two, but there's just a few extra buttons here and there. And also they had some controls for like the HVAC, like the heating and cooling and stuff.
Yeah, and I guess the biggest thing is for reverse drive and all that, there was a little
shifter knob or whatever.
Kind of like a shifter knob, but it was all like electric and everything. I've been used to using it right here so much that kind of threw me for a
because
loop.
they did have was it the windshield wipers or something was up there, and I was like, oh no, that's not it.
Yeah.
The nice thing is there was no like start button, because some of the other EVs are out there, you still have to push a start button, which is like, I guess you're going to push start, but by putting it into gear, it's going to start. The employee that was with us did have one of the key fobs.
Yes.
It didn't. I mean, it looked kind of like a little pack of gum or something like that, and so had it on his key fob, and we didn't have it, but we didn't need it. We were able to just get in the car, like he said, and just put it right into gear and drive it.
Yeah, but he did say the phone app will eventually be able to work his phone as key once those updates start rolling out. So let's jump into the back seats. I found the back seats to be a little bit more cozy feeling than especially the Y and maybe even the 3. I really think a lot of it came down to that hump in the floor for that battery pack.
Yeah, just you can't spread your foot over there as much if you were on one of the sides.
Exactly. Well, even sitting on the side, you at least have that freedom to kind of move your feet a little bit more, but it felt very kind of like compartmentalized because of that hump in the floor. So I think like if they could remove that hump, it would make the back seats a lot more comfortable, especially for 5 people.
One thing that was nice about that back seat though is it was still like the 60-40 split.
60-40
and it
with
had
a
the
pass-through.
Full down armrest similar to what we've got in the Model Y, but it did have a pass-through for like skis or longer items, and that's something you'd think that Tesla could add because
it can't be that hard.
Yeah, yeah.
I say that, but I'm not designing the car. But it shouldn't be that hard because almost all crossovers and SUVs here in Colorado would have that because so many people ski.
Yeah, it was a hatchback,
Yeah.
and there was some nice like cargo management features. Like it had the back floor, but it folded up, and it would stay folded up, so you could put cargo on either side, and it wouldn't slide around. And also there was some straps, so you could strap stuff in. And that seemed like a nice little feature that probably doesn't cost that much, but I would definitely like to see something like that in a Tesla one day.
Yeah, and it also did have a parcel shelf, which raised because it was tied to the inside of the hatchback.
Kind of what we see in the Model S.
Exactly.
But it also lifted up, kind of like some aftermarket accessories allow in the Model S.
Exactly, but it would be nice. I know some people kind of say you don't need the partial shelf in the Y because it's hard to see through, but you can still see through that rear glass. It would be nice to see something like that.
The funny thing talking about the rear glass is the windows on the rear seats, they're like, there's no real window there. It's glass on the outside of the door, but if you open it up, it's just the metal frame. So it's they don't have like the rear windows like in the Y.
Yeah, it's definitely not a frameless window style like all the Teslas are, which I think is really nice and sleek. So that kind of threw me for a loop. I took a picture kind of with the door open and one without, and it just looked very odd.
But that does lead to one benefit that the Polestar 2 did have over the Model Y, I think, is that we saw the attachment for the luggage rack. That were right in the frame instead of being clamped on around the glass. Yeah. And that's one thing some people have had problems with on the Model 3 and the Model Y is when they attach the luggage rack or the roof rack, if they over tighten it, it can crack it. Whereas with the Polestar 2, their holes were right on the side of the frame.
And then moving all the way to the front of the vehicle, the frunk is a little lackluster. I don't know. Some people don't even use their frunks, but at least here it does have enough room for a charging cable. And under that charging cable was actually a little air pump for your tires because there is no spare tire in that vehicle either.
Yeah, and it had like the goo or whatever that you could use with that if you had a leak. Also, though, it did include a jack.
Little jack.
So while there was no spare tire included, if you had like a tire repair kit, you would be able to use plugs and use the jack to remove the tire and then plug the wheel, plug the tire and then reattach it to your car.
It does include roadside assistance though for 4 years, he told us. So that is kind of nice as well.
Yeah, and it sounded like it was really similar to what Tesla used to offer where they will come pick up the car because they still have like very limited locations, and it sounds like there's only going to be like 50 service locations, I think, around the United States, and that's not going to be in every single state. So if you do have one and you have problems, they would send a vehicle to pick your car up and take it back to the service station. An
interesting thing, though, that we found is you can actually do 360 camera on that. It's one thing that a lot of Tesla owners have asked for. Unfortunately, Tesla doesn't have a camera on the very front of the car looking down. So an accurate 360 is a little tricky, as well as it doesn't have one on the side mirrors aiming down. But Tesla has been kind of talking about maybe making some kind of augmented 3D.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's meant for like up close, like for parking situations, or if it's more for when you're driving on the road and cars and vehicles are further away.
Exactly. But the nice thing with this is you do see it all around the car, right up to the car. So pulling up to a curb, super easy.
Yeah, and
the car in front of you, super easy.
Yeah, and when we pulled into the driveway, I wanted to get close to the Model Y, and I didn't see the ultrasonic feedback.
Right.
And I guess maybe we were still too far away, but I just clicked on the button for the camera and shows the front camera, and I could see, inches away from the car. And they did tell us that it would beep if we did get too close. But
True.
I can see Tesla saying we don't need it because eventually the car, will be driving itself. So yeah, so we drove the Polestar 2. I think it started around $59,000.
It was not the performance version.
All-wheel drive version. He did say that they're going to be coming out in the future with a cheaper version, which would only be like front-wheel drive.
Yeah.
But this was the all-wheel drive version, and I noticed that when you put it into gear, it does have that pedestrian warning system sound, very muted.
Yeah.
And one thing that was weird though is when we were doing the turn signals, they were very muted as well. It sounded kind of like tapping.
They sounded like this.
Yeah, it was just a little minor clip.
Sounded like somebody was tapping the glass.
Yeah, but not a big complaint about that. But it was a nice little drive. I did feel like there was a bit of a lag when I first pushed the accelerator.
Yeah, there was.
And I don't know. I expected it just a little bit sooner. But once it got moving, it definitely had some pep.
Compared to a Model Y, it's not obviously going to be as fast or anything like that. I definitely think the Polestar brand is more looking to maybe kind of go after like Volvo owners, because it is very Volvo-esque, which isn't a bad thing, but they are trying to compete in the EV market with a little bit different of a pathway.
Yeah, and so we drove this model. It was the all-wheel drive, had a range of about 233 miles, which is okay. I mean, if you look at the price point, $59,000, the Model 3, Model Y both have a much bigger, longer range for less money.
Yeah.
And so it's like, but it's a good start. It's a good competition. But I mean, at that price point, even if you do have a few nicer features on the inside, range to me is still king, because if you can go 50% farther without having to charge, that's going to make those road trips a lot better.
And speaking of charging, they don't have their own charging network like Tesla, so you would have to rely on Electrify America or some other charge network. But I mean, most of the time you charge at home. The only thing, those road trips might be a little trickier. And about the price, the great thing about the Polestar 2, though, is it does still qualify for that full $7,500 U.S. federal tax credit.
Yeah, and also in Colorado and other states, there might be thousands of dollars in additional tax credit.
Exactly. So, I mean, you kind of have to factor that in a little bit, but at the end of the day, I still think Tesla is a little superior with their range. Their driver assistance features in the Tesla definitely outweighs that in the Polestar 2. But at the same point, FSD is $10,000. So again, weighing it out, I guess it's kind of what works best for you. But I think Tesla, in the grand scheme of it, probably would still win the race.
I think too, because you can look at the exterior of the car and look at styling, and it does have a nice style, and Tesla, they have a certain styling as well.
Yeah.
But I guess neither car wins on styling because it's just a preference. It's not like styling, a performance or something.
Exactly. Range, I think, is the biggest issue for new EV owners and adopters. Is they want to make sure they have enough range. They don't have to worry about it. But yeah, that was pretty much our experience in the Polestar 2. Just wanted to kind of give you guys like our feedback. Maybe eventually we'll be able to actually get a car and be able to film with it. That is the hope, because I would like to actually show you guys a little bit more in depth on some things. But being able to get to drive it and actually experience it was actually quite awesome. And I'm really proud that another company actually has a good EV for delivery now, and not in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. I think that is the most important thing, is they're building and delivering right now. But that's pretty much it for this one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Definitely comment down below what you think about the Polestar 2. Is it something you would consider, or is there another EV that you would consider over that? And we can talk about it all down there. As always, though, huge thanks to our channel sponsor, Abstract Ocean. If you are looking to accessorize your Model S, X3, or Y, definitely check them out. All linked down below, and using code Tesla Inventory will get you 15% off of your first purchase. Our two must-have accessories are definitely going to be a center console wrap or a carbon fiber effect shell. It really helps protect that center console and create your vehicle your own, as well as a matte screen protector. It really cuts down any glare from the sun, as well as any fingerprints, thanks to its oleophobic surface. As always, though, thumbs up if you enjoyed that video. Go and click here to subscribe, here for some other ones, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.